The first mistake I made was underestimating the hairless ape. The third mistake? Well, that was assuming he would die like every other soft-skinned human I had killed in the past 3 rotations. The second mistake was throwing my ancestral spear at him. My name is Kira-Ven, first spear of the Torgan Legion, and I have never been more furious in my 400 years of existence. Not when the Council of Elders denied my promotion. Not when my clutch sister died in the Void Wars. Not even when I discovered my mate had been feeding intelligence to the rebel fleet. No, this rage was different. This was the kind of bone-deep fury that made my purple scales shimmer with bioelectric current. The kind that made lesser warriors step back and offer their throats in submission. Because this human, this impossible, infuriating, death-defying human had just caught my spear. The battlefield had gone silent. 60,000 Torgan warriors stood frozen, their mandibles hanging open in disbelief. The human forces behind their crude barricades had stopped shooting their primitive projectile weapons. Even the smoke from burning vehicles seemed to hang motionless in the acrid air of this backwater planet they called Earth. With his bare hands, mid-flight, smiling, I stood there, my throwing arms still extended, staring at the most ridiculous sight I had ever witnessed. Marcus Reed, according to our intelligence reports, was supposed to be dead 3 seconds ago. Instead, he held my family's ancient war spear, its obsidian tip gleaming in the red light of this system's dying star, and he was smiling. The arrogance of these creatures never ceased to amaze me. "Well," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence with that peculiar human accent that sounded like grinding metal, "this is awkward. You see, humans do not understand the significance of what just happened. They cannot comprehend the weight of tradition that spans back 40,000 years. They have no concept of the Torgan Code of Honor, no understanding of the ancient laws that bind our warriors to oaths older than their entire civilization. Awkward." He called the moment that would forever change both our species awkward. It is also a law that has never been invoked against a non-Torgan. But I do. And so does every other Torgan warrior on this field. When a spear is thrown in formal combat and that spear is caught by the intended target, the ancient law is clear. The thrower becomes bound to the catcher until death claims one or both parties. It is a law written in the blood of our ancestors, carved into the sacred stones of our homeworld, and observed without exception for millennia. Kira-Ven of the First Legion, came the booming voice of War Commander Gorth, my immediate superior and a male I respected despite his tendency toward excessive caution. "Explain yourself." Until now, I turned to face him, my secondary arms flexing involuntarily as stress pheromones flooded my system. Gorth stood 8 feet tall, his battle-scarred hide bearing the marks of 100 conflicts. His 4 yellow eyes fixed on me with the intensity of a plasma cannon charging for maximum yield. "The human caught my spear, War Commander," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the chaos raging in my mind. "The law is clear." Around us, the murmur of voices began to rise. 60,000 warriors started to debate the implications of what they had witnessed. Some argued that the law was absolute, regardless of species. Others claimed that applying ancient traditions to these soft-skinned invaders was nothing short of blasphemy. "The law," Gorth said slowly, his words measured and deliberate, "was written for Torgan warriors, not for alien vermin." Yet he had caught my spear. I looked back at Marcus Reed. He still held my spear, though he had lowered it to a less threatening position. His dark hair was matted with sweat and battlefield grime, his brown eyes alert and calculating. For a human he was relatively tall, perhaps 6 feet in height, but he looked like a child next to the towering forms of my people. The weapon itself was no ordinary tool of war, forged from the core metal of a dying star and blessed by the battle priests of Torg Prime. It had been passed down through 30 generations of my bloodline. Its balance was perfect, its weight distributed according to mathematical principles these humans had not yet discovered. When thrown by a trained Torgan warrior, it could punch through 6 inches of combat armor, or take down a charging Rixel beast at 300 paces. Marcus Reed had caught it like someone tossing him a training stick. The casual disrespect in his tone made my scales flare with warning colors. This human spoke of my ancestral weapon like it was some curiosity to be studied and catalogued. The urge to leap across the intervening space and tear his throat out with my combat claws was almost overwhelming. "So," Marcus called out, apparently oblivious to the religious and cultural crisis he had just triggered, "what happens now? Do I get to keep this? Because I have to say, the craftsmanship is incredible. My weapons expert is going to lose his mind when he sees this thing. Kira-Ven, you will retrieve your weapon and resume the attack. The humans die today as planned." But the law held me bound. War Commander Gorth began to pace, his massive feet crushing the scattered debris of battle as he moved. Each step sent small tremors through the ground, a reminder of the raw physical power contained within his muscular frame. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute command. "I cannot, War Commander." "Repeat that, First Spear." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Around me, the murmur of voices died away completely. Defying a direct order from a war commander was grounds for immediate execution. Gorth's 4 eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "You would abandon your oath to the Legion for a human." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the distant sounds of warfare from other sectors of the battlefield seemed to fade away. Gorth stared at me with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of disbelief, rage, and something that might have been fear. I straightened to my full height, my spine rigid with military bearing despite the fear clawing at my insides. "I cannot retrieve my weapon, War Commander. The ancient law of spear binding has been invoked. Marcus Reed of the human forces is now my responsibility until death claims one or both of us." Instead, he did something far worse. "I honor all my oaths, War Commander, including those written in the blood of our ancestors." Gorth's response was a roar that shook the ground beneath our feet. His combat claws extended to their full length, each one capable of slicing through metal, and his bioelectric field flared with lethal intensity. For a moment I thought he might kill me where I stood, ancient law or no ancient law. He laughed. "Very well, Kira-Ven. If you wish to invoke the old ways, then we shall observe them fully. You are hereby stripped of your rank and expelled from the Legion. You and your human pet may leave this battlefield together, assuming you can convince your new bound companion to abandon his own people." The implications hit me like a plasma blast to the chest. Stripped of rank, expelled from the Legion, cut off from the only life I had ever known, the only purpose that had given my existence meaning, my military record, my honors, my family standing within the warrior caste, all of it gone in an instant. And for what? For a human who probably did not even understand what had happened. "Let me guess," he said, his voice carrying a note of dry humor that reminded me why I found humans so infuriating. "Ancient alien law says we are stuck together now, right? And you just got kicked out of your space army for following the rules?" I turned back toward Marcus Reed, expecting to see confusion or fear in his alien features. Instead, I found him studying me with an intensity that was unsettling. His brown eyes seemed to catalog every detail of my appearance, from my ceremonial battle scars to the rank insignia I would soon be required to remove. "Burden." Marcus tilted his head slightly, a gesture I had observed in other humans when they were processing complex information. "Interesting choice of words. Tell me, Kira-Ven of the former First Legion, what exactly does this responsibility entail?" "You understand correctly," I replied, hating the formal tone that crept into my voice whenever I was uncertain. "The law of spear binding creates an unbreakable oath between warriors. You are now my responsibility, and I am yours until death releases us from this burden." The fact that he had deduced the situation so quickly was disturbing. Human intelligence was supposed to be limited, their reasoning abilities inferior to those of more advanced species. Yet this Marcus Reed had grasped the essential facts with minimal information. "Must, what?" "I must protect you from harm," I said slowly, working through the implications as I spoke. "I must ensure your honor remains intact. I must stand beside you in battle and support your just causes. And I must—" The words stuck in my throat, too absurd to voice. The question caught me off guard. In all my years of studying military law and tradition, I had never encountered a situation where the bound parties were from different species. The texts were clear about the obligations between Torgan warriors, but they said nothing about humans and their peculiar customs. Marcus Reed stared at me for a long moment, then threw back his head and laughed. The sound was harsh and grating to my sensitive hearing, but there was something genuinely amused about it rather than mocking. "Oh, this is rich," he said, wiping moisture from his eyes with the back of his hand. "An alien warrior woman just got legally bound to me because I caught her spear, and now she has to help me raise kids. You cannot make this stuff up. I must consider your offspring as my own, should you choose to reproduce. You find this amusing?" I demanded. The casual way he dismissed the sacred nature of our bond sent another wave of rage through my system. This human treated everything like a joke, as if the traditions that had shaped my entire existence were nothing more than entertainment. "Lady, I find everything about this situation hilarious. 3 hours ago, I was getting ready to die fighting space lizards with energy weapons. Now I have apparently got my own personal alien bodyguard who's legally obligated to like my kids. Yeah, I find that pretty funny. Space lizards." He called us space lizards. However, Marcus continued, his expression growing more serious. "I'm also smart enough to recognize an opportunity when I see one. How much do you know about human military tactics, Kira-Ven?" I was beginning to understand why the war commander was so eager to exterminate these creatures. The question made me uncomfortable. The campaign has faced unexpected challenges. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And how many human worlds has the Torgan Legion conquered in the past 5 years?" The question was so unexpected that I answered before I could consider the implications. "Very little. Our intelligence reports suggest that humans rely primarily on overwhelming firepower and crude psychological warfare. Your technology is primitive, your strategy simplistic, and your individual warriors are physically inferior to any civilized species." I said nothing. The answer was 0, but admitting that would undermine everything I had been taught about Torgan superiority. Unexpected challenges. I like that. Very diplomatic. Let me rephrase the question. How many human worlds have you actually managed to hold on to after conquering them? "That's what I thought," Marcus said. "Your people are great at winning battles, Kira-Ven, but you are terrible at winning wars. You want to know why? Because you keep underestimating us. You see primitive technology and assume primitive minds. You see smaller bodies and assume weaker spirits. You see chaos and assume stupidity. No, they don't. But ideas do. Strategies do. And humans have spent the last 5 years learning everything there is to know about your people while you have been busy dying on our worlds." He hefted my spear, testing its balance with the casual ease of a born warrior. "But here's the thing about humans, something your intelligence reports probably didn't mention. We don't just adapt to challenges. We turn them into advantages. We take your strength and make them into weaknesses. We survive impossible odds and come back stronger than before." Pretty words, I said, though something about his confidence was beginning to unnerve me. But words do not win wars. The truth in his statement hit me like a physical blow. How many Torgan expeditionary forces had been lost in the human territories? How many warriors had simply vanished? Their signals going dark without explanation. The official reports blamed equipment failures and unexpected resistance. But what if the reality was something else entirely? War Commander Gorth's voice cut through my troubled thoughts like a plasma blade. "Enough of this nonsense. Kira-Ven, you have one final chance to remember your loyalty to the Legion. Kill the human and reclaim your honor. What if these primitive humans were actually winning?" "I cannot, War Commander. The law forbids it." I looked at Gorth, then at Marcus, then at the 60,000 Torgan warriors who were watching to see what I would do. The weight of tradition pressed down on me like a collapsing star, but the law was clear. I had thrown my spear in formal combat. Marcus Reed had caught it. The bond was sealed until death. Gorth's roar of fury echoed across the battlefield. His bioelectric field flared to maximum intensity, casting dangerous shadows across his scarred features. When he spoke again, his voice carried the promise of violence. Marcus Reed walked toward me, still carrying my spear, his expression thoughtful. When he was close enough that only I could hear his words, he spoke in a low voice that somehow managed to cut through the noise of preparing armies. then you are no longer Torgan. You are exile marked, oath broken, and dead to your people. When this human grows tired of you, when he discards you like the broken tool you have become, remember that you chose his alien flesh over the honor of your bloodline. With that pronouncement, Gorth turned away from me and began issuing orders to his subordinates. The Torgan battle line began to reform, preparing to resume their attack on the human positions. In moments, this section of the battlefield would become a killing ground once more. The question was stranger than his previous ones, but something about his tone suggested that my answer was important. You were marked as a priority target. Human command personnel. Your death was supposed to demoralize your forces. Kira-Ven, I'm about to make you an offer that's going to sound completely insane. But before I do, I need to know something. When you threw that spear at me, were you trying to kill me specifically, or was I just another target? Command personnel. Marcus smiled, but it was not the amused expression from earlier. This was something sharper, more predatory. That's interesting, because I'm not actually a commander. I'm what humans call a specialist. My job is to study alien technology and figure out how to use it against you. You want me to betray my people? I'm an engineer. But yes, infiltration is part of the job description. And right now, Kira-Ven, I'm looking at the most valuable intelligence asset that has ever fallen into human hands. A former first sphere of the Torgan Legion, bound by ancient law to protect and serve a human specialist. The implications of his statement began to dawn on me. You are an infiltrator. I did not want to answer, but the tactical situation was obvious. Approximately 15,000 casualties, given current defensive arrangements. I want you to help me save both our peoples from a war that's going to destroy us all. Marcus gestured toward the Torgan battle line with my spear. Your war commander is about to order another frontal assault on prepared positions. How many Torgan warriors are going to die in the next hour? And how many humans? Perhaps 3,000. If your forces maintain discipline, 5-to-1 kill ratio in our favor, and your people still consider this an acceptable exchange. Why? The question forced me to confront something I had never really examined before. Because the Legion is vast, we can afford the losses. I wanted to deny his words, to reject his analysis as human propaganda, but the numbers were there, lurking in the background of every intelligence briefing I had attended. The casualty reports that kept growing longer. The recruitment drives that struggled to replace losses, the increasing reliance on conscripted auxiliary forces instead of veteran Legion warriors. Marcus leaned closer, his alien scent filling my nostrils with its strange mixture of chemical and biological odors. Your Legion is bleeding to death, Kira-Ven. You are losing this war, and your commanders are too proud to admit it. But you are not too proud, are you? You just proved that by choosing ancient law over modern convenience. No, you can't. Because we are not just fighting you here, we are fighting you on 67 different worlds across 12 star systems. And on every single one of those worlds we are killing your people at the same ratio or better. What are you proposing? I asked. You speak of cooperation between natural enemies. Help me end this war before it destroys both our species. Your people have technology we need. We have strategies you need. Together we might be able to find a solution that doesn't involve turning half the galaxy into a graveyard. A massive explosion interrupted his words as Torgan artillery began its preliminary bombardment of the human positions. The war commander had decided to begin the assault early, perhaps hoping to catch the humans off guard while they were distracted by our conversation. I speak of survival, Kira-Ven. Because right now, we are both losing this fight. Your people are bleeding out in space, and mine are running out of places to hide. But if we work together, if we share what we know— Marcus Reed looked up at the incoming plasma fire with the casual interest of someone watching a weather pattern. Looks like your former boss is getting impatient. We should probably get out of here before those energy bolts start landing closer. Marcus smiled. And this time there was nothing predatory about the expression. It was the smile of someone who had just been dealt a winning hand in a high-stakes game. I want to go home, Kira-Ven. I want to take you to Earth and show you something that your intelligence reports missed. Something that's going to change everything you think you know about humans. I am oath-bound to protect you. I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Where do you wish to go? He handed me my spear, the ancient weapon feeling different in my hands now that the bond had been sealed. But first, we need to get off this battlefield alive. Think you can manage that, warrior? I looked at the approaching Torgan forces, then at the human defensive positions that were already beginning to return fire. The tactical situation was clear. We were caught in the middle of a killing ground with nowhere to hide and no obvious escape route. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that separated real warriors from pretenders. Behind us, the war commander's voice rose above the sounds of battle, calling for my death and promising rewards for whoever brought him my head. Marcus Reed laughed as the first plasma bolts began to impact around us, but he kept pace as I led him toward what I hoped would be safety. Follow me, I said, activating my personal shield generator and checking the charge on my plasma rifle. And try not to get killed. Ancient law or no ancient law, I have no intention of explaining to your people how I lost my bound companion on the first day. Ahead of us lay uncertainty, potential exile from everything I had ever known, and the possibility of a future I could not yet imagine. But for the first time in my 400 years of existence, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of just killing time between battles. The spear bond had changed everything. And somehow, I suspected that Marcus Reed had known it would. Getting off a battlefield alive while being hunted by your former comrades is significantly more difficult than military training suggests. The theoretical courses always assume you have allies, backup plans, and at least basic equipment designed for survival rather than killing. They do not account for situations where you are fleeing through a war zone with an alien who treats mortal danger like an inconvenience, carrying nothing but your ancestral spear and a growing sense that your entire life has been built on lies. Marcus Reed, I was discovering, had a disturbing talent for finding paths through seemingly impossible terrain. While Torgan plasma fire rained down around us and human artillery responded with their crude but effective explosive projectiles, he led me through a maze of destroyed buildings and abandoned vehicles with the confidence of someone who had mapped every crater in advance. I followed, my scales still flaring with warning colors every time a plasma bolt passed close enough to singe the air. The human moved with economy and precision, wasting no motion, conserving energy for when it would be needed most. For a supposedly primitive species, his tactical awareness was annoyingly competent. Left here, he called over the screaming of incoming ordnance, ducking under a collapsed wall section that would have taken my head off. Watch the cables, because I helped plan the defense of this sector 3 months ago, Marcus replied, checking something on a small device attached to his wrist. Rule number 1 of human warfare: always have an exit strategy. How do you know this route? I demanded as we paused in the shelter of an overturned human transport vehicle. The implications of his statement made my combat claws extend involuntarily. You knew this battle would happen. You prepared for retreat. I prepared for tactical withdrawal to secondary positions. Yes. There's a difference. The difference being, Marcus smiled that predatory smile again. When you retreat, you are running away. When you withdraw, you are moving your enemy into position for the next phase of your plan. Aerial pursuit, I reported. We need to find better cover. No, we don't. Marcus was studying his wrist device again, apparently unconcerned by the death squad hunting us from above. We need to get to grid reference 77 Alpha in the next 4 minutes. Before I could ask what he meant by that, the distinctive whine of Torgan jump pack engines filled the air above us. I looked up to see a full squadron of Legion aerial scouts circling the area, their sensors scanning for heat signatures and movement patterns. Leading them was War 2nd Exiled, a veteran tracker who had never lost a target once he picked up their trail. Trust. The human wanted me to trust him while he led us directly into a killing zone. The rational part of my mind screamed that this was suicide, that Marcus Reed was either insane or planning to betray me to save his own skin. But the spear bond held firm, and something about his confidence suggested he was not as reckless as he appeared. That is in the opposite direction from safety. That depends on how you define safety. Marcus stood up and began jogging toward what looked like the most heavily contested section of the entire battlefield. Trust me on this one, Kira-Ven. I know what I'm doing. Marcus Reed slid down into the crater without hesitation. Grid reference 77 Alpha turned out to be a crater roughly 30 feet across, created by what looked like a direct hit from Torgan heavy artillery. The rim was lined with debris and the bowl itself was filled with brackish water that stank of chemical contamination. It was, in short, exactly the kind of place any sensible warrior would avoid. I followed, keeping pace despite my growing certainty that we were both going to die in the next few minutes. "Are you completely insane?" I called after him. The sound of jump pack engines was getting closer. War 2nd Thax had picked up our trail and was closing fast, his squadron spreading out to cover all possible escape routes. In less than 2 minutes, this crater would be swarming with Legion aerial scouts, and we would be trapped with nowhere to run. Probably. But that's never stopped me before. Marcus waded through the contaminated water to what looked like a random pile of rubble at the center of the crater. Besides, insanity is just another word for thinking outside established parameters. Marcus Reed began moving pieces of rubble aside, revealing what looked like a metallic hatch built into the crater floor. "Kira-Ven, I need you to know something before we go any further. What you are about to see is classified at the highest levels of human military command. Sharing this information with unauthorized personnel is considered an act of treason punishable by death. I'm telling my oath-bound companion something she needs to know if we are going to work together." Marcus activated some kind of lock mechanism, and the hatch began to iris open with a soft mechanical hum. "The spear bond makes you authorized personnel now, whether Earth Command likes it or not. You are telling a former enemy combatant state's secrets." The third thing I noticed was the soft voice that spoke from hidden speakers. "Welcome back, Marcus. I see you have brought a guest." The first thing I noticed when the hatch opened was the light. Not the harsh glare of artificial illumination, but something warmer and more natural. The second thing I noticed was the air that flowed up from below, clean, filtered, and carrying scents that seemed somehow familiar despite being completely alien. "Diana is not human," I said. It was not a question. I peered down into the opening, expecting to see another human or perhaps some kind of advanced combat system. Instead, I saw a tunnel leading into darkness, lined with technology that was clearly human in origin, but far more sophisticated than anything in our intelligence reports. "Hello, Diana. This is Kira-Ven, formerly First Spear of the Torgan Legion." "Kira-Ven, meet Diana, the most dangerous weapon in the human arsenal." "We need to move," Marcus said, swinging his legs over the hatch opening. "Diana, lock us down once we are inside. Full stealth protocols." "Diana is an artificial intelligence," Marcus confirmed, "and she's been waiting to meet you for quite some time." The sound of jump pack engines reached the rim of the crater. War 2nd Thax had found us. "Of course. Marcus, Kira-Ven of the Torgan Legion, please be aware that you are entering a restricted military facility. Any attempt to damage equipment or harm personnel will result in immediate neutralization." The tunnel was longer than I had expected, sloping gently downward for what felt like several hundred meters before opening into a chamber that defied everything I thought I knew about human technology. The walls were lined with displays showing tactical information from dozens of different worlds, real-time intelligence feeds, and what looked like complete schematics of Torgan military equipment. The polite tone of the artificial voice somehow made the threat more menacing than any battle roar I had ever heard. I followed Marcus into the tunnel, my ancestral spear clutched tightly in my secondary hands, as the hatch sealed above us with a sound like finality itself. The Third Fleet had been reported destroyed with all hands 6 months ago. In the center of the room, suspended in some kind of energy field, was a complete Torgan battle cruiser. Not a model or a hologram, but an actual ship. One I recognized from the markings as the Talon of Supremacy, flagship of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. But it was the central feature of the chamber that made my scales turn cold with recognition. "Impossible," I whispered. "Not impossible," said the voice of Diana, now coming from speakers throughout the chamber. "Merely improbable. The Talon of Supremacy was captured intact during the Battle of Kepler 4422b. Its crew was taken prisoner and is currently being held in comfortable detention facilities on Luna." Marcus Reed walked over to a control console and began calling up displays that showed detailed analysis of Torgan technology. "Your people are very good at building things, Kira-Ven. Unfortunately for them, humans are very good at taking things apart to see how they work." "How long?" I asked. How long have we been doing this? About 8 years, ever since first contact. Your people made a fundamental error in their initial assessment of human capabilities. You assumed that because our technology was less advanced, our intelligence was inferior. You never considered that we might be smart enough to steal yours. The scope of what I was seeing began to register. This was not just intelligence gathering. This was comprehensive technological analysis on a scale that suggested years of preparation and resources far beyond what any primitive species should possess. Marcus gestured to the displays showing Torgan ship designs, weapons specifications, and tactical doctrines. Every piece of equipment you have brought into our space, every battle you have fought, every transmission you have sent, we have been watching, learning and adapting. Did you know that your plasma rifles have a fatal design flaw that makes them vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies, or that your jump pack fuel cells can be overloaded remotely if you know the right command codes? I stared at the information scrolling past on the displays, recognizing technical details that should have been known only to Torgan military engineers. This is why you have been winning. This is why we have been surviving, Marcus corrected. Winning implies we had a choice in the matter. Your people started this war, Kira-Ven. We are just finishing it. The captured crews, are they alive? All of them. Humans have this annoying habit of trying to avoid unnecessary casualties, even among enemy combatants. We prefer rehabilitation to execution. The casual way he spoke of destroying my entire civilization made my combat instincts flare, but the spear bond held my aggression in check. Instead of attacking, I found myself asking questions. The idea that Torgan warriors would willingly cooperate with humans was so absurd that I almost laughed. But something about Marcus's tone suggested he was not joking. We teach them about human culture, human values, human ways of thinking. Most of them are quite surprised to learn that we are not the mindless savages your propaganda describes. Some have even volunteered to help us find a peaceful solution to this conflict. Rehabilitation. Diana, bring up the Luna facility feeds. Guest quarters section. The main display shifted to show what looked like a comfortable living area. Seated around a table that was clearly designed for Torgan physiology were 3 warriors. I recognized War's second Kalath, first engineer Vexnok, and battle sister Thera Lin. All of them were supposed to be dead. Show me, I demanded. Laughing. They were playing what looked like a human card game, laughing at something one of them had said. Impossible, I said again. I watched my former comrades, warriors I had served beside, bled beside, trusted with my life, behaving like they were on leave rather than in enemy captivity. The cognitive dissonance was almost overwhelming. Kalath has become quite skilled at poker, Diana observed. He claims the mathematical principles are similar to Torgan tactical analysis, though I suspect he simply enjoys the psychological aspects of bluffing. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Marcus activated another display, this one showing star charts and resource distribution maps. Your empire is running out of habitable worlds. Population pressure and resource depletion are driving expansion into territories that were previously considered too dangerous or too expensive to colonize. Human space represents the largest concentration of suitable planets within reasonable travel distance of your core worlds. You speak as if you understand our strategic situation. Because you need to understand what this war is really about, Marcus replied. Your war commanders tell you that humans are an existential threat to Torgan civilization. Our leaders tell us that your people want to exterminate us all. But the truth is simpler and more complicated than either side wants to admit. We do understand it, because humans faced the same problem 300 years ago and we solved it through technological innovation and social adaptation rather than conquest. We learned how to make hostile worlds habitable, how to extract resources from asteroid belts and gas giants, how to build sustainable closed-loop ecosystems that could support large populations indefinitely. The implications of what he was suggesting began to dawn on me. You are proposing an alternative to war. I'm proposing a partnership. Torgan engineering expertise combined with human adaptive strategies. Your people get access to the worlds they need without having to fight for them. Humans get access to technologies that will let us expand beyond our current limitations. Everyone wins. Some will. Others won't. But that's where you come in, Kira-Ven. The war commanders will never agree to such an arrangement. Marcus turned to face me directly, his brown eyes holding an intensity that reminded me of a hunting predator focusing on its prey. You are not just any former Torgan warrior, you are first spear of the Legion, daughter of a noble bloodline, hero of the Void Wars. Your voice carries weight in Torgan society, even in exile. I want you to help me save both our species from destroying each other over a misunderstanding. The war your people are fighting isn't necessary, Kira-Ven. It's just the easiest solution to a complex problem. You want me to be your advocate among my people? Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Diana's voice cut through the noise with mechanical precision. Unknown. However, I am detecting active scanning from orbital assets. The Torgan fleet may have deployed new sensor technologies. Multiple contacts approaching the facility. Torgan deep penetration forces have located our position. Estimated time to breach 7 minutes. Marcus cursed in a language I did not recognize, then began working frantically at the control console. How did they find us so fast? Elite assault troops specializing in deep infiltration and target elimination. If they have found this place, they will not stop until everyone inside is dead. I hefted my spear, checking the charge on my plasma rifle out of habit. How many humans are stationed here? Hunter killers. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the facility's climate control. War Commander Gorth has called in the hunter killers, 47 research personnel and 12 security staff. Diana replied. All non-combatants, 59 soft targets against a hunter-killer pack. I shook my head. They will all die. Not if we stop them first, Marcus said. He was pulling equipment from storage lockers, weapons and devices. I did not recognize. Diana, initiate lockdown protocols. Seal all entrances except the primary access tunnel. Route emergency power to defensive systems. Marcus, I must advise against engaging hunter-killer forces with current personnel and equipment. Noted and ignored. Kira-Ven, I need to know something. Are you still bound by the spear oath if we are fighting your own people? The question forced me to consider aspects of the ancient law that I had never examined before. The spear bond required me to protect my companion and support his just causes, but it said nothing about conflicts of loyalty between the bond and other obligations. Even against the Legion itself, if necessary. Even against Torgan forces? The law is unclear, I admitted, but the bond supersedes all other considerations. If you fight, I fight beside you. Good, because we are about to field test the most important development in human military technology since the atomic bomb. He handed me a weapon that looked like a hybrid between a human rifle and Torgan plasma technology. The balance was wrong for human physiology, but perfect for my longer arms and different center of gravity. Marcus smiled, but this time there was no humor in the expression. It was the smile of a warrior who had just realized he held a winning hand in a game where the stakes were life and death. Proof that humans and Torgans can build something better together than either species could manage alone. Diana, bring the prototype weapons online. Full power to the adaptive targeting system. Acknowledged. Marcus, please be aware that these weapons have not been fully tested under combat conditions. What is this? I looked at the hybrid weapon in my hands, then at Marcus Reed, then at the displays showing my captured comrades living peacefully under human care. Then today's going to be very educational for everyone involved. Marcus checked his own weapon, a compact device that hummed with barely contained energy. Kira-Ven, I hope you are ready to make history. Above us, the sound of cutting tools began to echo through the facility's structure. The hunter-killers had found the primary access point, and were beginning their breach. In minutes, they would be inside, and this hidden chamber would become a killing ground. The first explosion echoed from somewhere above us as the hunter-killers began their assault. The real war was about to begin. The thing about hunter-killers that makes them so effective is not their superior equipment or enhanced combat training. It is their absolute certainty that they are the apex predators in any environment they enter. The thing about humans that makes them so dangerous is their talent for turning that certainty into a fatal weakness. I was discovering this as I crouched behind a reinforced barrier in the upper levels of the facility, listening to the hunter-killer pack tear through defensive positions that should have held them for hours. The sound of Torgan plasma cutters slicing through reinforced barriers was almost musical in its precision, a steady rhythm that spoke of professional competence and overwhelming firepower. "Diana, status report," Marcus said into his communication device, apparently unconcerned by the fact that death was cutting its way toward us one bulkhead at a time. 6 hunter-killers confirmed, led by War Prime Korvax. They have breached 3 defensive checkpoints and will reach this level in approximately 4 minutes. All facility personnel have been evacuated to secure areas. War Prime Korvax. I knew that name, and it made my scales turn the color of fresh blood. Korvax was legendary even among the hunter-killers, a warrior who had never failed to eliminate his assigned targets. He had personally killed more than 300 enemy combatants across 4 different star systems, and his tactical innovations had been incorporated into Legion training protocols. If Korvax was leading this assault, then War Commander Gorth was taking no chances. My former superior wanted me dead badly enough to deploy one of the Legion's most valuable assets. "Marcus," I said, testing the weight of the hybrid weapon he had given me, "you should know that Korvax has never been defeated in close combat. He is considered the finest warrior of his generation." "Good to know." Marcus was adjusting settings on his own weapon, apparently calibrating it for maximum effectiveness. Is he better than you?" The question caught me off guard. In all my years of military service, no one had ever asked me to compare my abilities to those of a War Prime. The ranks existed for a reason, and that reason was an absolute hierarchy based on proven combat effectiveness. "He outranks me by 3 levels, I said finally. "That's not what I asked." I considered the question more seriously. Korvax was older, more experienced, and had access to better equipment. He commanded respect throughout the Legion and had earned his position through decades of successful operations. By every measurable standard, he was the superior warrior. But there was something about the way Marcus Reed fought, something about his casual confidence in the face of impossible odds, that made me reconsider my assumptions about combat effectiveness. "I do not know," I admitted. "We have never faced each other in battle." "Well, looks like today's your chance to find out." Marcus stood up and moved toward the main corridor, his hybrid weapon held with the casual competence of someone who had spent years learning to kill efficiently. "Diana, initiate Protocol 7. "Are you certain, Marcus? Protocol 7 has never been tested under actual combat conditions. Everything we are doing today is untested. Might as well be thorough about it." The facility's lighting shifted from normal illumination to something softer and more diffuse. At the same time, I felt a strange, tingling sensation across my scales, as if the air itself had become charged with some kind of energy field. "What is Protocol 7? I asked. "Adaptive Combat Enhancement. The facility's AI analyzes the biological signatures of everyone inside and optimizes environmental conditions for maximum performance. Air pressure, oxygen content, gravity, electromagnetic fields. Everything gets adjusted to give friendly forces the best possible advantage. And this works on Torgan physiology? We are about to find out. Diana's been studying your people for 8 years. She knows more about Torgan biology than most Torgan doctors." The sound of cutting tools stopped, replaced by the distinctive whine of powered armor systems cycling to full combat readiness. The hunter-killers had finished their approach and were preparing for the final assault. 6 contacts, Diana reported. "They have deployed in standard breach formation. Korvax is maintaining overwatch position, while his subordinates prepare for simultaneous entry through multiple access points." "Show me," Marcus said. The wall displays shifted to show tactical feeds from throughout the facility. I could see the hunter-killers moving with mechanical precision, their powered armor gleaming under the emergency lighting. Each warrior carried enough firepower to level a city block, and their coordination was flawless. Korvax himself was unmistakable. His armor was decorated with the skull marks of his confirmed kills, and his massive frame moved with the deadly grace of a predator that had never encountered an opponent capable of offering serious resistance. "He is magnificent," I said, and meant it. Whatever else Korvax might be, he was the perfect embodiment of Torgan warrior ideals. "He's about to be dead," Marcus replied. Diana, are the surprise packages ready? All systems are prepared for deployment on your command. What surprise packages? I demanded. Marcus smiled that predatory smile again. The thing about studying an enemy for 8 years is that you learn all their strength, but you also learn all their weaknesses. Korvax might be the finest warrior of his generation, but he's still thinking like a Torgan, and Torgans have some very predictable tactical blind spots. The first explosion came from the level below us, followed immediately by the sound of Torgan battle roars and human weapons fire. The facility's research staff might be non-combatants, but they were apparently well-trained non-combatants. Contact, Diana announced. Hunter-Killer Team 2 has engaged defensive positions on Level 3. Enemy forces are advancing despite casualties. Casualties? I had not expected human civilians to inflict significant damage on hunter-killers. 3 wounded, 1 fatality, Diana reported with mechanical precision. Dr. Sarah Lou's improvised explosive devices proved more effective than projected. A human civilian had killed a hunter-killer with improvised weapons. The implications of that fact made my worldview shift in ways I was not prepared to handle. Movement on this level, Marcus said, checking his weapon one final time. They are coming through the main access corridor. Diana, execute the surprises on my mark. I could hear them now. The soft whisper of powered armor moving through the facility's corridors. 6 of the deadliest warriors in Torgan space, led by the legendary Korvax, hunting us through an alien facility filled with technology they did not understand. It occurred to me that this was exactly the kind of tactical situation humans seemed to excel at creating. Kira-Ven, Marcus said quietly, I need you to know something before this gets started. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, you have already done more to advance human-Torgan relations than any diplomat or negotiator in the history of both our species. I have done nothing but flee from my former comrades and listen to your proposals. You made a choice. When your war commander ordered you to abandon ancient law for military convenience, you chose honor over obedience. That choice is going to change everything. Before I could ask what he meant, the first hunter-killer rounded the corner into our corridor. The warrior's powered armor was a work of art, every surface optimized for both protection and intimidation. His plasma rifle was already tracking toward our position as he advanced with textbook tactical precision. Marcus pressed a control on his weapon and fired. The hybrid projectile struck the hunter-killer's center mass and did absolutely nothing visible. The warrior paused for a moment, apparently as surprised as I was by the lack of effect, then continued his advance. Marcus, I said urgently, your weapon is not functioning. Give it 3 seconds. The hunter-killer raised his rifle to firing position, then suddenly convulsed as if struck by lightning. His powered armor began sparking and smoking, internal systems failing in cascade failure. Within moments, the most sophisticated personal combat system in Torgan military history had been reduced to an expensive metal suit that could barely move. Nanobotic virus, Marcus explained casually as he put 2 more rounds into the helpless warrior. Delivered via impact, designed to infiltrate and subvert Torgan technology systems. Takes about 30 seconds to propagate through a full armor suite. The hunter-killer collapsed, his weapons dead, his communications severed, his life support systems failing. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever witnessed. You turned our own technology against us. We turned your technology into our technology. There's a difference. Marcus was already moving to a new position, anticipating the next phase of the battle. Diana, how many more contacts? 5 confirmed. Korvax is maintaining overwatch but has not yet committed to direct engagement. His subordinates are advancing through secondary corridors. 2 more hunter-killers appeared simultaneously from different access points. Their coordination perfect despite the loss of their teammate. These warriors had adapted to the new threat, maintaining greater distance and using cover more effectively. I raised my own hybrid weapon and fired at the closer target. The projectile struck his shoulder guard and immediately began eating through the armor plating like acid. The warrior staggered but continued advancing, switching to backup weapons as his primary systems failed. Persistent, Marcus observed. I will give them that. Hunter-killers do not retreat, I said, firing again and watching more of the warrior's equipment fail in spectacular fashion. They complete the mission or die trying. then they are going to die trying. What followed was the strangest battle I had ever participated in. The hunter-killers fought with all their legendary skill and determination, but every advantage they possessed was systematically neutralized by human countermeasures. Their superior armor became a liability when infected with nanobotic viruses. Their advanced weapons were jammed by electromagnetic pulses. Their tactical coordination was disrupted by Diana's ability to predict and counter their movements in real time. Within 10 minutes, 4 of the 6 hunter-killers were dead or incapacitated, but Korvax himself had not yet appeared. He is waiting, I realized. He has analyzed our tactics and is developing countermeasures. Smart. What would you do in his position? I considered the tactical situation from Korvax's perspective. His team was being systematically destroyed by weapons and techniques he had never encountered before. Standard Torgan doctrine called for immediate withdrawal and regrouping, but hunter-killers did not withdraw. He will attempt to force close combat. I said, our weapons are effective at range, but they require time to deploy their effects. In hand-to-hand fighting, superior physical capabilities and training would overcome technological advantages. And he will target you specifically, remove the human commander, and the alien weapons become irrelevant. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That's what I would do. Diana, where is Korvax now? Unknown. He has somehow masked his thermal signature and electromagnetic emissions. I am unable to track his current position. The facility's lights went out. In the darkness that followed, I heard the whisper of movement that could only be powered armor in full stealth mode. Korvax had found a way to neutralize the facility's sensor systems and was now hunting us through terrain he had spent the last hour mapping in detail. Night vision, Marcus said quietly. Torgans have superior low-light adaptation, I whispered back. He has the advantage now. Maybe, Diana, initiate emergency lighting in 30 seconds. Full spectrum, maximum intensity. I felt rather than saw Marcus moving away from me using the darkness to relocate to a better position. It was a sound, tactical decision, but it also meant that when Korvax made his move, I would be facing him alone. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself oddly eager for the confrontation. The emergency lighting activated with blinding intensity, revealing Korvax standing less than 10 feet away from me. His armor was scarred and battle-damaged, but his weapons were still functional and his 4 yellow eyes burned with the fury of a predator that had been denied easy prey. Kira-Ven, he said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. You will surrender the human and return to the Legion. Your exile can be forgiven. Your honor can be restored. I looked at him, this perfect example of everything I had been trained to become, and realized that I no longer wanted what he represented. No, I said. Then you die as a traitor to your own species. Korvax moved with the speed and precision that had made him legendary. His combat claws extended as he closed the distance between us, aiming for a killing strike that would end the fight before it truly began. I met his attack with my ancestral spear. The impact of our collision sent shockwaves through the facility's structure. Korvax was larger, stronger, and more experienced, but I was fighting for something he could not understand. The spear bond had changed me in ways that went beyond simple loyalty or obligation. It had given me a purpose that transcended the narrow confines of military duty. We fought through the corridor and into the main chamber, our weapons clashing in a display of skill and violence that would have impressed the battle masters of Torg Prime. Korvax's technique was flawless, his timing perfect, his strength overwhelming. But I was no longer fighting as a Torgan warrior. I was fighting as something new, something that combined the best aspects of both our species. Every move I made was informed by human tactical flexibility and Torgan combat excellence. Every decision was guided by principles that neither culture had developed in isolation. When Korvax finally created an opening for a killing strike, I was not where Torgan training said I should be. When I countered with a technique that combined human unpredictability with Torgan precision, he was not prepared for the combination. My spear found the gap between his armor plates and War Prime Korvax, greatest warrior of his generation, fell to an exile who had learned to think beyond the limitations of her upbringing. Impressive, Marcus said, stepping out of the shadows where he had been waiting. Very impressive. I stood over Korvax's body, breathing heavily and trying to process what had just happened. I killed him. You defended yourself and your oath-bound companion. There's a difference. Before I could respond, Diana's voice filled the chamber with an announcement that changed everything. Attention all personnel. The Torgan command ship has just broadcast a general ceasefire order. All Legion forces are to stand down immediately and await new orders. I stared at Marcus in confusion. That is impossible. The Legion does not call ceasefires during active operations. They do when their war prime stops reporting and their hunter-killer team goes silent, Marcus replied. Diana, establish communication with the Torgan command ship. Priority channel, full diplomatic protocols. Channel established. You are connected to War Commander Gorth. The main display activated to show Gorth's scarred features, his 4 yellow eyes burning with barely contained rage. When he spoke, his voice carried the promise of violence. Human, you will return our personnel immediately, or we will reduce this entire continent to radioactive ash. War Commander, Marcus said politely. I am Marcus Reed, Special Operations Division, Earth Defense Force. I believe you have met my oath-bound companion Kira-Ven. Gorth's eyes widened slightly as I stepped into view of the communication pickup. Kira-Ven, you live. I live, War Commander. And I have learned things that you need to hear. You consort with aliens and betray your oath to the Legion. There is nothing you could say that would interest me. Then perhaps this will interest you, Marcus said. He activated another display showing the comfortable detention facilities on Luna where captured Torgan crews were living in peace. War Commander, I would like you to meet some old friends. The display shifted to show War's second Kiloth approaching the communication station. The veteran warrior looked healthy, well-fed, and completely at ease. War Commander Gorth, Kiloth said formally. I bring greetings from the survivors of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Kiloth, you are alive. We are all alive, sir. 147 officers and crew, all in good health and being treated according to the highest standards of military courtesy. Gorth stared at the display in obvious confusion. This is impossible. The humans are savages. They do not take prisoners. With respect, War Commander, our intelligence regarding human capabilities appears to have been incomplete. These beings are far more sophisticated than our report suggested. Marcus activated additional displays showing human technology derived from Torgan principles, peaceful interactions between the species, and detailed proposals for cooperative development projects. War Commander, Marcus said quietly, this war does not have to continue. Your people need resources and living space. We need advanced technology and engineering expertise. Together we can build something better than either of our species could achieve alone. Pretty words from a species that kills our warriors. We kill your warriors because you attack our civilians, I said, stepping forward. But we could choose differently. Both of us could choose differently. Gorth looked at me for a long moment, then at the displays showing captured Torgan crews living peacefully under human care, then at the technical schematics that proved human and Torgan technology could be successfully integrated. What do you propose? He asked finally. A test, Marcus replied. 1 year. Establish joint research stations in neutral space. Exchange personnel and information on a limited basis. Develop cooperative protocols for resource sharing and territorial administration. If it works, we expand the program. If it fails, we go back to killing each other. And if I refuse? Marcus's expression grew serious. Then this war continues until one of our species is extinct. Your people are dying, War Commander. Ours are dying. We can choose to stop or we can choose to keep bleeding until there's nothing left worth fighting for. The silence that followed stretched on for nearly a minute. Finally, Gorth spoke in a voice that carried the weight of command and the burden of leadership. 1 year limited cooperation. Any sign of betrayal or deception, and we resume hostilities with extreme prejudice. Agreed, Marcus said. Diana, draft the preliminary agreements according to Protocol 12. War Commander, I believe you will find the terms acceptable. As the details of the ceasefire were being negotiated, I found myself thinking about the spear bond that had started this entire sequence of events. Ancient law had brought Marcus Reed and me together, but it was human adaptability and Torgan honor that might end a war between the stars. "Marcus," I said quietly, "what happens to us now?" Now we do the hard work of building peace, instead of winning battles. Think you are up for it?" I looked at my ancestral spear, still stained with Korvax's blood, then at the displays showing human and Torgan technology working in harmony. "I think," I said carefully, "that the spear bond may have been the most fortunate mistake either of our species ever made." Marcus Reed laughed, and for the first time since I had caught his thrown weapon, the sound did not grate against my nerves. "Kira-Ven, I think you might be right." 6 months later, I stood in the observation deck of the Joint Research Station orbiting Kepler 4-2b, watching human and Torgan engineers work side by side on projects that would have been impossible for either species to complete alone. The sight should have filled me with pride at this unprecedented cooperation between former enemies. Instead, I was trying to figure out how to explain to Marcus Reed that Torgan mating bonds were significantly more complex than human marriage contracts. Some traditions, it seemed, were going to require more adaptation than others. But that, as humans were fond of saying, was a problem for another day. The war was over. Peace, with all its complications and possibilities, had just begun. And somewhere in the back of my mind I could hear the echo of ancient law. The thrower becomes bound to the catcher until death claims one or both parties. Death, I reflected, might be a very long time coming. Then I found that I was perfectly content with that arrangement.